Hello, I hope you had a good Monday. I hope we have a good Tuesday as well. What we have for Tuesday, when you click on Paste and Schedule for Unit 3, right at the front of the homepage, this will open up and you'll scroll down to Tuesday, October 27th. And we're going to start today off with a warm-up CNN Student News. The link will be in there tomorrow or in the morning. I'll put it up there. Articles of Confederation PowerPoint. I will go over that in just a second after I get done explaining what we're doing for the day. And then after you're done listening to me talk about the PowerPoint, you will have the Articles of Confederation questions. And that's basically just like a small check for understanding stop at the end of the class period. And then the Veterans Day assignment, which is due on Friday. Okay, real fast, the Veterans Day assignment. On Thursday, it would be November 12th, we are going to have a Veterans Day assembly. So what we're trying to do between the social studies classes is get you thinking about the Veterans Day and why it's important, but also to thank veterans for their service to our country. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is create a video thanking veterans for their service. After you're done, please turn it on PowerSchool. I'll have a spot for you to turn it in. And we will select the best video for playing at the Veterans Day Assembly on November 12th. Okay, and this will be due on Friday, October 30th. And you can also create it on Flipgrid if you wish. So links are below if you choose that option. And please speak loudly and clearly in your video. Might be a good idea to write down what you're going to say beforehand so you're just reading from it. Also, please show your face in the video so it's personable for the assembly. And if you want to just record a video on your phone or computer, you can do that as well. So you do not have to create it on Flipgrid. Be creative and sincere in your video. Okay, and then I have the links below for the Flipgrid if you're going to do it on Flipgrid. Okay, so that's kind of that assignment, and we're just going to kind of let you work on it throughout the week. Okay, so if you have some free time, work on it and get it done. We'll probably have the most time to work on it on Thursday or Friday. Okay, so that's that. Articles of Confederation, the PowerPoint. I'm going to quickly go over it while you're here. Okay, so view and present. Okay, so the Articles of Confederation was our first form of government when we gained our independence from Great Britain. Okay, so it kind of, we went with the Articles of Confederation, and then now we have the Constitution that we follow. Okay, so Articles of Confederation were just before the Constitution. Okay, and in the definitions for chapters, you can ignore the chapter 7.1 definitions, but these are some important words that you're going to want to know for the chapter. Constitution is a set of basic principles and laws that states the powers and duties of the government. Okay, so the Constitution, supreme law of the land, we still have it today. That is basically the set of procedures and laws that we have to follow as citizens and that the government has to follow. Okay, so it specifically states the powers and duties that government has. Okay, so that is why, for example, our president can't serve for 15 terms. Okay, he is limited by the Constitution and the amendment that we put in after the Constitution was written saying that he could only serve for 2 terms, 4 years apiece. Okay, Articles of Confederation, this was the first national government of the United States. And we don't have it anymore because we kind of found out it didn't work for various reasons that we'll get into later. Ratification is the official approval of the Constitution or amendment or anything, okay? So when we say ratification, that is basically just approval. Northwest Ordinance, this established a territory that included Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Okay, so this kind of established those areas and gave us those states. So the Articles of Confederation. So states' rights were very emphasized in the Articles of Confederation. Okay, so what we were worried about was if we set up a government giving too much power to the national government, then we'd be setting up something just like what we had in Great Britain. Okay, so they basically set up the opposite system where states' rights were emphasized a lot, but then the national government didn't have a lot of power. Okay. So the central federal government was very weak. Okay. And this formed a league of friendship amongst the states. Okay. So each state was kind of operating as their own nation. Okay. Where in today's world, you might grow up in Indiana, but if someone asks you where you're from, you would say the United States. Okay. You wouldn't say I'm Indian or I'm Indianer, I guess would be the proper word. Okay. You would say I'm from the United States if someone asked you. Okay, back then, with the way the Articles of Confederation were set up, if that continued, you would say, I live in Indiana, or I grew up in Indiana, or I'm an Indiananer. So this was written by the Second Continental Congress in June of 1777, and this was ratified and formally approved by the people in 1781. And dispute over Western land not settled yet delayed the ratification. So some of the powers of Congress and limits of Congress. Okay, so Congress had the power to coin money. Okay, so they could make money, and this was very important for setting up how much money is available and things like that. They could also omit new states and divide Western land. Okay, so this was a national power that they had. Request money from states. Okay, notice it says request. That means that states have the option to say no. Maintain an army. Appoint military officers. Establish a postal system. Okay, postal and mail service. Declare war and make peace. Conduct foreign affairs. Okay, so you can kind of see some of the powers of Congress. This sounds like a lot, but if you look at the powers of Congress that they have today, that our national government has today, it's very, very small. Okay, they basically gave them enough power to maintain an army and work on foreign affairs. Where are the limits of Congress and some of the things that they don't have? No executive branch. Okay, so things like the police, the president, everyone working under the president, those are all examples of the executive branch. Okay, they're the people in our current form of government that execute the laws and make sure they're followed. Okay, so if Congress comes up with a law that says everyone has to pay 5% sales tax, okay, if a store or someone's not enforcing that law and collecting 5% sales tax, that's when the executive branch would come in and say, you guys need to do this or you're going to have penalties. You're going to have punishment or discipline because you're not doing it. No national court system, so it was all done within the states. They also had no power to tax. This was kind of the biggest one because they had a lot of wartime debts and they couldn't pay those off because they had no power to tax. No power to regulate trade or currency. This was a big problem because they couldn't approve these things or make sure that currency was all the same. So, for example, states were starting to come up with their own currency, and this is a huge problem. No power to keep states from forming their own treaties. Okay, so their alliances with other countries. Okay, so that could create a bunch of problems. Major law required approval of 9 states. Okay, so that was a big percentage of the states that we had at the time. I think we had 13 states at the time, so it was 9 out of 13, basically a 75% majority, which is a lot. No power to raise an army. Okay, so if they wanted to add soldiers or things like that, they couldn't do a draft to add soldiers into the army. A Northwest Ordinance. So Congress passed Northwest Ordinance in 1787, and this was how to distribute the lands in Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And this banned slavery in new states. So slavery was starting to become a huge issue even back then. Guaranteed rights to individuals and territories until they became states. And NWO was one of the few successes of the Articles of Confederation. So this Northwest Ordinance them setting this up and giving the statehood to these states and things like that. That was what kind of looked upon, looking back, was one of the few successes of the Articles of Confederation. Shays' Rebellion. This occurred August 31st, 1786 to June 1787. And this was a Massachusetts farmer, Revolutionary War veteran, Daniel Shay, and he led a rebellion to keep farmers from losing land. Okay, basically, he couldn't afford to pay the taxes to the bank, and the bank was threatening to take over his farm. So Daniel Shay led a rebellion to keep his farm. And he attacked courthouses so they couldn't foreclose on his farm. And up to 2,500 people rebelled under Shay's rebellion. And they even attacked the Springfield, Massachusetts arsenal. And rebellion lasted almost a year. And Congress couldn't afford an army, so they could not send help. So this is kind of like when the leaders in the government realized there might be a huge problem with our government if we can't stop rebellions. Okay, if we don't have the ability to put these rebellions down, then we're going to have complete chaos in our country. And people and delegates finally realized they needed a strong federal government. So this was the huge wake-up call for everyone to change. And at this time, they were looking at how to improve the Articles of Confederation. And later on, they decided to scrap it and just go with the Constitution. Okay? So through the Articles of Confederation, kind of the lasting impact of it was they figured out that we needed a strong federal government. It needed to be one team working together to help the United States instead of each individual state loosely conjoined into a national government. Okay, so that's the PowerPoint. What you're going to have to do after listening to this PowerPoint is answer the Articles of Confederation questions, which, when you go to the pacing schedule, are right below. Okay, right there. And this is just kind of showing that you've been paying attention to what we were talking about and you watched the video. If you didn't hear some of these answers on the video, you could look them up online as well. But what I'd like you to do is list at least 3 weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, list at least 3 strengths of the Articles of Confederation, and what did Americans fear during the time the Articles of Art? What did Americans fear during the time that the Articles of Confederation was written? Sorry, it took me a while to get that out. So what would be your answer to that for that question? Amending the Articles of Confederation took what percentage of the states in a vote? Okay, you might want to look this up. Okay, so that is kind of what we have for today. Thank you for listening and following along with the PowerPoint. You guys can now get started on answering those Articles of Confederation questions. And then if you have time, start working on the Veterans Day assignment. Okay. This will be our last day of Unit 3. And after that, we're going to transition to Election Day coverage for 5 days. And then we're going to transition back to Unit 3 for the end of Unit 3. Okay. So hang on to your virtual notebook. You will turn those in at the end. So on November 5th. Okay. All right. Hope you have a good day. Thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.